Okay, blasting off here as the countdown runs down. Welcome to the Holy Apple, the only Holy Apple in the world. Today we're on the 17th day of Shvat on the year 5776. I hope you brought your seatbelts with you, because we're going to go for a few doozers here. Today the subject, actually it's a twofold subject. Subjects that we're going to discuss today are: do Jews celebrate the downfall of the evil? Right? Remember that wedding? People were dancing. Remember that wedding that the Secret Service in Israel pulled out of their pulled the bunny out of the hat? Remember that one? Dancing around. So, do Jews celebrate the downfall of the evil? And that's number one. Number two, are Jews appreciative? Are they appreciative of the countries that, or the nations or the countries that oppress them? Do we still have a sense of gratitude towards these nations? Okay, two questions. Believe it or not, they're both connected to the portion that we read 3 days ago, and it's also connected to this week's portion of the week, which is nBeshalach and Yitro. Okay, so here we're going to roll over here. First, we're going to start off with gratitude towards the enemies of Israel, those that have oppressed us. When I say gratitude, we have to understand that, for example, the Jewish people were able to receive a certain degree of benefit from being in a country named, let's say, Egypt. Fact is that there was a famine in the land of Israel, and just like Abraham went down there and he was able to save himself and his family, so too the Jewish people in the times of the 12 tribes, the sons of Jacob, they also went down. They also found a temporary haven in the land of Egypt. Throughout history, the gates of various countries have been open to the Jewish people and have allowed them in after a certain amount of period of time. According to the commentator, the nBeshalach, usually 100 to 200 years, the gates no longer are open. There's no longer the red carpet, no more welcome signs here. The, that sign that says no entrance, right, no go. That's usually how it rolls out in Jewish history. So it's a very important question here. Even after we're tossed out of a place, do we still have some kind of gratitude, appreciation to the country that 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years did benefit us, did allow us in, did open up their borders for us? Okay. We have here, if we could only pick it up over here, we have a source in the, I'm going to say it by heart because it's in my bag, but I want to leave you here alone. I might get, you might be frightened here to be alone, past the green line here. So we're not going to leave you alone. The Chatam Sofer and his son, the Ktav Sofer, some 200 years ago, they both write something very interesting. Last week we read in the portion of the week, nBeshalach, we talked about how the Jewish people came out of Egypt, and all of a sudden they're looking behind, and sometimes when you look behind you become like a pillar of salt, and this wasn't the case, but they looked behind them and it was pretty scary scenario, because now all of a sudden they have, on one hand we have the water the sea in front of us. On the other hand, we have the Egyptians behind us with all kinds of funky military equipment. The most latest of technology was in Egypt. Egypt was the number one country, the superpower in all categories, also military-wise. So they're behind us. So question arises, of course, Jewish people were 600,000 over the age of 20, from the ages of 20 to 60. So you have other people a little bit above that, a little bit below, 19 years old, 18 years old. Number two, it tells us in last week's portion of the week that the Jewish people left Egypt also with arms, bearing arms. Not as in bare arms, like you don't have anything in your arm, but like bearing arms, like weapons. So, the Jewish people have weapons, they're armed. The question is, by the commentaries, the Khatam Sofer and his son, why did the Jewish people who were in danger, why didn't they just turn around and fight? It's like battle them. Say, very interesting answer. The answer is that they could have. If they would have chosen to, they could have turned around and they could have battled against the Egyptians. However, the Jewish people had a certain degree of gratitude, appreciation to the Egyptians, and therefore they chose not to do that. So now they're in trouble, because now they're not going to fight, and now they got the water in front of them, so exactly what's going to be. So we see here a level of appreciation. This is not a new concept. Most of you, I hope, are familiar with. On Passover, when we sit down, we talk about the Exodus of Egypt. We notice that the first three plagues, which happens to be blood, frogs, and lice, those were perpetrated by Aaron, Moses' brother. So the rabbis, Chazal, ask a question. Why didn't, Moses was the star of the show. His brother Aaron was just kind of like one of those warm-up bands. So how come Moshe didn't do it? He did other plagues. So the Chazal tell us, the rabbis teach us, that Moshe was saved by the water. Blood was in the water. Frogs are in the water, or at least you hope they're in the water and not in your house. And lice. So Moses was saved by the fact that his little, motorboat that they put him into, when they could no longer keep the fact that they had a baby quiet, and there was a decree that all the Jewish males should be thrown into the river and killed. So it was they could no longer keep it quiet. So they took a chance. Maybe some righteous person would find the little motorboat of Moses and bring him in, and until things got better, they would raise him. So the water saved Moses. Number two, the sand. If we remember, Moses goes out and he kills the Egyptian who was fighting against a Jew. The sand buried the Egyptian and was able to, for a certain amount of time, it saved Moses from being identified as the perpetrator of the death of the Egyptian. So the sand, that's where the dirt, the sand, is where the lice come from. So Moses, as a gratitude to water, as a gratitude to sand, did not partake in these three plagues. So once again, we have a concept that a person has to have an appreciation to to our surroundings. People's parents, of course, family members, friends, somebody helped you out, somebody gave you information, somebody taught you something. Again, there's a sense of appreciation that a person must have. Question here is, though, is this the correct Jewish outlook? Of course, once again, we've quoted great people, great sources. The Chatam Sofer and his son lived approximately 250 years ago. They were giants, a million times greater than us. Of course, we're talking about even further back when we bring about Chazal, the rabbis, we're talking about. So there's definitely here, of course, in the Chachamim with our with our rabbis, here we was talking about having appreciation to not to the Egyptians, but to the one might call it the nature. So, with all the respect that, of course, that we have, we're going to bring in other sources that will show that that they disagree totally with this particular drasha that was given by the Chatam Sofer and the Ktav Sofer. So let's start rolling. Okay, we're going to start off. Batting first is going to be the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra writes that he asked the same question as the Chatam and Ktav Sofer. Why didn't the Jewish people fight against the Egyptians? The Chatam Sofer, as we said, and his son mentioned that the Jewish people were guests in their country, and for a certain period of time, they were welcome guests, and the Egyptians saved the Jewish people from famine, etc. So therefore, we have to have an appreciation, and therefore they were not fought against.
They say we have to have an appreciation, or that they naturally had an appreciation?
You have to have an appreciation. That's the reason why they didn't fight. That's the reason why they didn't fight. Okay, so let's look into the subject. We have the Ibn Ezra, the commentary of the Ibn Ezra. He asked the same exact question as these two great Rabbanim, and his answer is totally different. He says, listen, it is true that the Jewish people were armed, but you know there's a slogan in the world that if you don't know how to use, if you don't know how to use your weapons, they're going to be turned against you. A person learns for a couple of weeks in, Kung Fu, he thinks he's Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, thank you there. Guy, he's like, listen, guy, you've been learning for 2 weeks, 2 months. You better watch out here because, that's going to turn against you. It's not a good idea to use it. It's not a good idea to use it. You got to know how to use it. So, not a good idea. Imagine that. Like, you've been slaves for 210 years. Now you came out of Egypt, and just 5 days ago you got a few weapons. How do these things work? You're going to blow yourself up, or you're going to blow up people around you, please. Put your arms down. Put your arms down. The Ibn Ezra says an unbelievable Torah. The Torah is that the mentality of the Jewish people at this time, after 210 years of being slaves, was totally of a slave. And they looked, for 210 years, they had the giants. Who were the giants? They were not from San Francisco, not from New York. The giants of their time, were the Egyptians. They were the lords, the kings. They were the royalty. Wow. How can you, the untouchables. For 210 years, yes, sir, yes, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, the yes man? That's what you've been doing 210 years. You're keeping your head down until you're walking around with your head down. So what was happening to us, we became slaves. How in a few days, once again, we're talking about 7-day difference. We just got out of Egypt, right? We just got out of Egypt. 7 days later, they're at us at the sea, and we're going to all of a sudden, just like that, we're just going to come up and we're going to fight in battle against the #1 superpower of the world, the Egyptians. Yeah, tell me. So the Ibn Ezra says, don't even think about it. There was no chance, and they were not at any capabilities yet, either physically, what? Yeah, very low souls.
Like the Hilltop Boys against the IDF.
I'll take the Hilltop Boys, actually. I'll take the Hilltop Boys. You better watch yourself.
Turn to the table there, Rabbi.
I was a big fan of I think his name Jimmy the Greek, putting his money down, yeah. Okay, folks, that's the Ibn Ezra. So there was no chance. It has nothing to do with appreciation, nothing to do with gratitude here. There was physically, mentally, there was no chance for the Jewish people to go out and fight against the #1 superpower with all their weapons, etc., with people that were not familiar with how to use them at all. Okay, so that's number one. An amazing thing brought to you by Rabbeinu Bachye. He brings the Mechilta. The Mechilta is in last week's Parsha. It's in the end of the first paragraph, nBeshalach. And the Mechilta, which is the words of our great sages, they ask a question on the verse. It says that the Egyptians came against the Jewish people. The Jewish people, we said, were 600,000 between the ages of 20 and 60. How many Egyptians came? So that's 2 on record. It's on record. And how many were there? Okay, hold on to your seats. I don't have my computer or my calculators with me, so you're going to have to do this at home after the class, but we're talking about heavy duty. Here's what Chazal tell us. Vishalishim al kulo. It says that there were 600 chariots, and there were something to do with 3 connected to each chariot. Question is, what is the 3? So somebody might do a simple calculation, say, wow, this was a great fight here. They only had 1,800 people, because you have 600 chariots. There's 3 men that are manning the, I'm not a New England fan here, nothing Peyton Manning, I guess you guys don't get it, but whatever, I'm not a Manning fan. I'm a Bob Manning fan, but not Peyton Manning. Anyways, so getting back to this, so a person might think, wow, that's great, 600 times 3, there was 1,800 Egyptians, there's probably 3 million Jews, if you count, sometimes the women are more ferocious than the men, you know, we see that sometimes in Israel, and got some kids like the Hilltop youth, sometimes they're more ferocious than the army personnel. So maybe you have a fighting chance here. There's only 1,800 of them. Oh no, but that's not the figuring here. Okay, hold on to your seats. Here's the thing. Chazal tell us the following: that when it says there were 3 times, or the number 3, something 3, we're talking about 600,000 Jews. For every Jew, there were 3 Egyptians on your head. Okay, that comes out to 1 million, close to 2 million, 1,800,000, close to 2 million on the Jewish people. So we had 600,000, fighting age, and we're going up against close to 2 million Egyptian professional superpower soldiers here. Okay, that's the first opinion. That's like a modest opinion, Okay, the next one is, when it says Shalishim al Kulo, it doesn't mean 3. It means 30. So we do now, the next figuring is, think about this one. There's, keep me posted here.
18 million.
18 million. There's 18 million Egyptians running after you. Okay? Oh yeah. We're just going to turn around here and boo 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 boo. Okay, but that's the that's the conservative opinion. There's even more of an opinion The last opinion is, get this one, hold us close here, 300 for each of the 500,000 Jewish soldiers, there were 300 on your head. 180 million. Okay, so according to Chazal, we could understand, wow, gee, got it. Why the Jewish people just turned to prayer. You can understand they were looking for a prayer. There's at least 2 million after them of an army, a military, 2 million after them. That's the most conservative, most humble opinion. Okay, so they're not going out to fight anybody over there.
Can I throw a taste of Kabbalah in here, Rabbi? It's interesting that the Jews were stuck between Chesed and Gevurah.
Yeah.
The Chesed meaning the water and the Gevurah meaning the army.
Good. We're gonna bring that point soon. We're gonna bring that point in. Okay. So we see so far, folks. It wasn't exactly possible for the Jewish people to go out and fight. So as far as appreciation to the Egyptians, that brings us to our next point. Let's look at God's take on appreciation of the Egyptians. I mean, we're God's people, right? So imagine this, right? Let's say that I happen to pick up one of, let's say, Lenny's kids. I have to pick him up, not on my bike, but I happen to be by mistake in a car, and I have to pick up one of his kids. So he's probably a little bit grateful, right? Because he's the father, and I happen to take one of his kids. He's grateful, right? So we're God's kids, right? So Hashem is teaching us a lesson of how to be appreciative towards the way that Hashem acts, Hashem would be in turn, if the Egyptians helped us out, Hashem should be also showing a tremendous amount of tolerance and appreciation and gratitude towards the Egyptians. So let's look at it. Let's look at God's appreciation towards the Egyptians that were a source of a haven for the Jewish people. Okay. So we're going to bring in two sources here. The first one is from a not so known midrash called Avkir, but it's also brought down to a famous book called Torah Shlema, and it's on Exodus 14:31. Here's what it says. On the verse, in last week's portion, it says that the Jewish people saw God's outstretched hand. When God wanted to drown the Egyptians, the spiritual angel of Egypt, his name was Uzzah, must be from Uzzah from Uzzah, kind of catchy there. The spiritual angel of Egypt, his name was Uzzah, he comes before God and says, Master of the world, you are called righteous and you are called straight. Why in the world are you going to drown these millions of Egyptians? All of a sudden, comes from the right another angel. This is Gabriel. This is Gabriel, the angel of the Jewish people. He comes in there with a brick. I don't know if he was singing, all in all, it's just another brick in the wall. I don't know if he was singing that. But he comes in with the brick, and the Gabriel says, the angel, defender of Israel angel, the holy angel says, listen, remember what these people did to your people, God. He doesn't say, remember, Abraham and Sarah when they came down here, when they came down about a few hundred years ago. Remember that. Remember how they were so kind to them. Remember that when the 12 tribes came down to Egypt, remember they gave them food and sustenance, etc., and they allowed them to stay in Goshen. No, he says, remember the brick. Remember that what they did to us, that we had to go and find straw, and what they did to us. You're going to have mercy on such a people? Gratitude, appreciation. Immediately Hashem, so to speak, changes the tune, and right there he brings in the the characteristic trait of gevura, of tremendous strength and fury, and he drowns millions of Egyptians. Number 2. This is from Midrash Tehillim on the 22nd chapter of Psalms. When the Jewish people got out of the sea, of the Red Sea, they were certain that just like they got out, the Egyptians are going to get out. I mean, think about it. 210 years, we're slave mentality. And the unbeatables, the powerhouse, the giants, these muscles, the bulging, and the smart, and the professors, and the economy, and they got it all. They got it all. Do nothing wrong. Of course they're going to come out, just like we came out of the sea. The Egyptians are going to come out also. What happens? The Egyptians are drowned into the sea. God doesn't stop there. He orders the sea. Try to say that one a few times quickly. He orders the ocean to spit out all those corpses. And he revives them. Now they're back. They're coming on back. This is like a return. And he sends the Jewish people. The Jewish people left Egypt with tremendous amount of dogs. Mike, I think it's from heaven that you were sent here today for this class. I mean, it's like, I didn't think about it, but it's like mamash from heaven. You're going to like this one. The Jewish people left Egypt with, I'm not going to get into the number now because the number is, even though Simcha, he kept a good pace on that, the sages about the times 3, then times 30 was very good. But I'm not going to get into the amount, but it's really heavy duty. When they left Egypt, it was heavy duty with the dogs. Why? Because there was a heavy duty amount of flocks of sheep and goats, etc., that they had to keep them safe. So they're going out with a tremendous amount of dogs. And don't forget how many people we have here, okay? We have somewhere between 2 million and 180 million Egyptians here. And they died, but they come back again, They come back, one of those NDEs, near-death experiences, but they're going to go back to death. It's going to be not too near, you're going to go back to the death. Okay, so they get out, and listen what Chazal tell us. Now, Hashem sends the Jewish people, and he says, take your dogs, and I want you to go and recognize the Egyptians that tormented you over the last years. Okay? I want you to go up. And I want you to eat I want you to sick the dogs on them. And the hand, remember that hand of the Egyptian that once he pushed you down on the floor? Remember that hand? I want that dog to bite off that guy's hand. And remember that left hand? Remember when the left hand, when he hit you upside your head? Remember that left hook? Take off his left. Remember that leg that ran after you and put you into fear? I want you to take it off. And remember that no heart? Remember that no heart sign? Yeah, eat up destroy him. Remember when he turned his back on you and you were crying and pleading for mercy, and he turned his back on you and he said, whatever, go to hell. I want you to destroy that. I want you to take your dogs and I want you to attack and kill at the area of the neck. Very interesting. Anyways, there we have God's appreciation for the safe haven that Egypt was for the Jewish people. Okay, now folks, here's a real deep one. Okay, now open up your hearts here. Rabbeinu Bachye writes an unbelievable Torah. We all know this when we were little kids. You know, when we were in kindergarten, they told us that the 4 cups of wine are because there are 4 expressions of freedom leaving Egypt. Yeah, remember that as kids. But now we're going to understand a tremendous lesson of life. Folks, I mean, open up. If it's just for this, I think YouTube might have been created just to hear this. This lesson is brought to you by Rabbeinu Bachye, and just the finish is going to be by a great Torah sage of our times named Rav Rosenblum. Okay, so we're going to start out with Rabbeinu Bachye. He says that the four terms of freedom, expressions of freedom in the Torah, which I just mentioned, they are 4 different stages of being redeemed. To be redeemed, it's not instant, you know? It's not like you put water on your oats and then you got oatmeal, or you put something into your micro and all of a sudden a minute later you got Ben's rice. Life's not like that. It's a process. To be redeemed, it's a process. So what's the process? Ve'otzeti. Ve'otzeti took place on Rosh Hashanah. It took place 6 months before the exodus of Egypt. At this time, the Jewish people were no longer slaves no longer worked or were not enslaved by the Egyptian people. This was on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, till this day, we say on Rosh Hashanah, Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim. What in the world are they talking about? Okay, Rosh Hashanah and Egypt, what's the connection between? Why is Rosh Hashanah connected to Egypt? Well, it's connected. It's connected because the Jewish people had a degree of freedom, autonomy from Rosh Hashanah. So that's how we remember the exodus of Egypt. Okay, next step. V'itzalti means to be saved. God saved us, saved the firstborn from being killed like all the other firstborn were killed. We have to understand that if you were firstborn and you were from Africa, you were killed in Egypt. If you were firstborn and you were from New York, okay, you were killed because you were in Egypt. So it just wasn't just the Egyptians. So the Jewish people were saved. This took place on the night before the Exodus. Okay, that's V'itzalti. V'ga'alti, I've redeemed you. When did the Jewish people become redeemed? That is the splitting of the sea. There, the redemption kicked in. V'lakachti, I've taken you to be my people. This was on Mount Sinai when we received the Torah. So, let's just summarize it quickly. We really were redeemed from Egypt when? At the sea. That's the Geulah, was at the sea. We received spiritual redemption at Mount Sinai. 50 days, a little less, 42 days or so later. There was spiritual redemption. Okay, so there's a lot of different when a person is a slave, there's a lot of care that has to go into a person to get him out of this rut. Not just in 1 second, okay? It's a traumatic experience. It takes a while. It's a process. Okay. Now, so that's Rabbeinu Bachya writes that there were 4 stages of redemption. Now, every holiday, and when we say the benediction of blessing over the wine on Friday night, and all holidays, what do we say? We say this is remembrance, zecher liyitziat Mitzrayim. We say this like a parrot. Why? Because if we thought of what we were saying, what in the world are we saying? We should be saying this is a remembrance, holidays, or the special kiddush, blessing over the wine on Friday nights. We should be saying, Zecher liyitziat mi Mitzrayim. We remember that you took us out of the land of Egypt. But we don't say that. We say most of the time, Zecher liyitziat Mitzrayim. I don't understand. Mitzrayim is still there. The Egyptians are still there. They weren't taken out. We were taken out from a land that's the name of the land is Egypt. But what does it mean to be taken, to take the Egyptians out? Zecher liyitziat Mitzrayim. I've taken the Egyptians out. Egyptians aren't out. They're still there. Okay, folks, open up your hearts. Here's where Rav Rosenblum connects. Before we get to Rav Rosenblum, there's a dispute in halacha. We know, this is not the dispute, but we know that there's a positive commandment every single day to remember what happened in Egypt. Question is, where the dispute comes in, what happens if for some reason, it doesn't matter right now what the reason is, for some reason a person was unable to say prayers that day, or he was unable to talk, whatever it might be. He wasn't able to say the words or various prayers that include the Exodus of Egypt. The only thing he was able to do was to sing the song of the splitting of the sea, which mentions 0 times the Exodus of Egypt. Doesn't say any mention of Exodus of Egypt. It's not the Exodus. We already got out 7 days before. So that's a halachic question. If a person only mentioned the words of the song of the sea after the splitting of the sea, is it considered to be that he has fulfilled his obligation of remembering the Exodus of Egypt? According to the Magen Avraham, the Exodus of Egypt is the splitting of the sea. That's really, as we said a minute ago, Ga'alti, redemption, that's the splitting of the sea. So therefore, you've fulfilled your obligation. According to the Khatam Sofer, not so. What does the splitting of the sea have to do with the Exodus of Egypt? There's Exodus of Egypt, that's one event, and there happens to be splitting of the sea. No connection between the two. Therefore, you have to, say another sentence. Most opinion hold that if you just mentioned the splitting of the Red Sea, you have fulfilled your obligation of remembering the Exodus of Egypt. Because as we said, that is the redemption. That was the true redemption. Now, listen closely here. We should be all scratching our heads here and saying, listen, I don't get it. Why in the world Hashem brought 10 plagues on the Egyptians, okay? They surrender, bring out that white flag. Okay, it's over. The fat lady has sunk. Okay, you guys get out of here. What in the world is going on over here? Why is there a part B to this whole thing? You know, you got out of Egypt, okay, it's all over. Let's celebrate, and that's it. What in the world is going on over here? We get out, and then Hashem is kind of like inciting the Egyptians. Yeah, you know, let's go. Go after them Jews. How'd you let them go? Your whole economy is going to fall. Yeah, they're coming after us. Hashem is putting all these ideas into their heads, and they're coming after us. What in the world? Why did Hashem feel that it was necessary to go through the whole motions of the splitting of the sea? What does it add? What does it add? So listen to this beautiful Torah. Why does it say every mitzvah that we do, almost, we always say, remembering this action that we're doing right now is in remembrance to the Egyptians leaving. Zecher liyitziat Mitzrayim. Folks, there's an expression in the world that it's easier to take out the Jews from the exile than to take the exile out of the Jews. It's not something that happens in 1 minute. We did leave Egypt. There was an exodus. But the Jewish people, as we spoke about today, they're always looking behind their backs. When is my Lord? Those superstars, those giants, those undefeatables, those muscular Egyptians, when are they going to come after us? Egypt was still in us. The nightmare of 210 years is alive and well. When do we get out of it? Hashem says, I'm going to create an event that's going to be a spiritual redemption. When you left Egypt, you left as a physical redemption. But your souls, your nefesh, is totally gone. You have the nefesh. How did Brother Arya say? Nefesh shfela. Your low souls. Imagine that, 210 years, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, your great-great-great, and how many greats? So we're totally blown away. We're sick in our souls are the souls of sick people. How do we get that Egypt out of us? It's only one way. God brings them all those evil people, those that participated, those that laughed, those that supported monetarily, those that didn't say anything. He brings them all. And each Jew goes one by one. And he sees this tormentor. And this is psychology 101. This is psychology 101 here. How do we free our souls from this nightmare of 210 years of this Holocaust that took place in Egypt? How do we remove ourselves from this nightmare? How do we remove Egypt from within us? And the answer is going by one to these enemies of God's people, enemies of Hashem, those scoffers, people that didn't believe, and one by one, blew them away. They're not going to come. What? Also with dogs. Yeah, you have to give them the credit over there. One by one, you're not going to see this guy again. This tormentor, right? You have him in your mind. You see him pulling out that weapon on you for your entire life. You keep on seeing him. You're not going to see him anymore. Because we're going to put an end to it right now at the sea. So each Jew went, 2 million, 18 million people, 180 million people, whatever, brought back to life. I want you to see it. I want you to see with your eyes. There is no longer any Egypt left. There are no more tormentors of you. They are all gone. You have redeemed your soul here. You are a free man from this point on. Okay, that's the first idea. Next question. We're going to start.
Yetziat Mitzrayim, it could be Mitzrayim, you got some, they left Egypt and they got drowned, or Yetziat Mitzrayim is a psychological thing that Yetziat Mitzrayim from us.
They left Egypt. Okay, they left Egypt, but still they left the land of Egypt. But still Egypt was left inside them.
It was the original Stockholm Syndrome, except there's the Cairo Syndrome.
Okay, now our next question, we'll see how far we get here. The next question is, okay, so let's just wrap up the first part of the class. The first part is appreciation, gratitude towards the Egyptians for being a safe haven for the Jewish people. Okay, we saw how that works out, how that plays out here against the various commentators that we saw. Okay, now to go on to the next level is, okay, so these Egyptians, they're drowning. Should we be celebrating, right? Remember the wedding? That was the Secret Service pulled the bunny out of the hat. They pulled out that, that wedding from the hat, and all of a sudden, right on time, and then they showed it to all the people of Israel, people celebrating the downfall of Jewish enemies. Is that a Jewish custom? Is that a Jewish thing to do? Is that the Torah outlook? Is that what God wants us to be doing? We're going to take a look right now. Okay, we're not going to go into this like 100%. We could go in. We can be here a few weeks maybe and discuss the subject. I'm just going to take it a little bit. I'm just going to touch the subject, the surface of the subject. Okay, we're going to talk about 3 Jewish holidays. The 3 Jewish holidays are the following. What is going on Purim? What's happening on Passover? And what's happening on Hanukkah? How do we look at these holidays? What are we celebrating? What do you mean, what are we celebrating? I mean what I mean. There could be 2 possibilities here of celebration. There could be 2 possibilities of a celebration. One type of person celebrates the fact that the Jewish people were saved. Jewish people were saved. I'm really bummed out that it had to be, remember Golda, Sister Golda Meir? She was talking about, what was her famous sentence? When it becomes...
When the Arabs love their children
right.
as much as we love our children, then there'll be this tragedy.
Okay.
You can forgive them.
That one, there's another one.
Forgive them for killing us, but she can't forgive them for having us kill them.
Oh, thank you.
That's even the better one.
Listen, Mike, first I thought it was because of the holy dogs that you have protecting Jews that you came today when we talked about the holy dogs back then. But here I see you come through again. Golda Meir, classic. Thank you. Okay, so now to really blow this one up, to really like in your face, we're going to go to this week's portion now, Yitro. Okay, here's what it says, this week's portion. Okay, Yitro, Jethro, for those, not Jethro Tull, but just Jethro, we'll keep it that way. Okay, here's what it says. It says, Vayichad Yitro. Yitro was very happy. Al kol tova asher asa Hashem li Yisrael amo ki otzi et bnei Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. Yitro was very happy at what? He was very happy that God had redeemed the Jewish people and taken them out of Egypt. The Gemara says on this verse, it's a very unusual expression, vayichad. If you want to say happy, use the word, if you're happy and you know it, use the word sameach. If you're happy and you know it, use the word sameach. Yeah, if you're happy and you know it. Okay, so it doesn't use, it used the word vayichad. Different kind of, so that's unusual. And if you look at the verse, he's talking about, what's he happy about? He's happy about that the Jewish people were saved. 1 second here. Don't you remember? There was about 2 million, 180 million Egyptians that bit the dust here. What about that? So it says in the Talmud, Sanhedrin. Don't forget to give us that 2-minute warning here. Yeah. Okay. It says in the Talmud in Sanhedrin the following. It says that Vayichad, the word Vayichad, it also it's some form of happiness, but it also means something else. It means there's a dispute in the Talmud. One opinion is Vayichad means something very sharp. What does it mean sharp? That when Yitro heard about the tremendous miracles, etc., what he did was he had himself circumcised. He took something sharp and had himself circumcised. There's another opinion. This is a dispute between Rav and Shmuel. The famous, dynamic duo, Rav and Shmuel. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, Rav. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, Shmuel. Guess that was before your time, Len. Okay, so the other opinion is that his facial expression became all wrinkled. His face became wrinkled because he was in pain when he heard what happened to the Egyptians. He's in pain, happened to the Egyptians. Why is that? So the Talmud teaches us an unusual lesson, or a very important lesson. Be very careful. When you're dealing with holy converts, you got to watch your tongue, got to watch your mouth. Why? Because for 10 generations, you have to be careful what you say if you mention Gentiles. Because there's certain connection that's still bonded with the convert. He's still somehow, or she's somehow connected to the nation that they're from. Now, we all know that Jethro, where is he from? He's from Midian. Midian is from who? Is from Abraham and Hagar. Hagar is from where? She's the daughter of Pharaoh, an Egyptian. So, Yitro is an Egyptian. So now he just hears about all these millions of Egyptians that perished in the sea. He's not too thrilled about it. He's not partying hardy at all. So you have to be careful. 10 generations, you have to be careful. So in a nutshell, let's go back to our original question. We have the holidays that we're mentioning right now, Hanukkah, we have Purim, we have Passover, where there's a battle going on between two sides. In Purim, we have the evil Haman. We have the Jewish people on the other side. With Hanukkah, we have the evil Greeks, we have the Jewish people, the Maccabees, we have in Passover the evil Egyptians, and we have the Jewish people. What is the celebration? According to Yitro, who is a tremendous, tremendous giant, he's a tremendous convert. He knew all forms of idol worshiping in the world. He was like a professor. He was a professor of idol worshiping. He knew it all, and he saw it all, and he experienced it all. And where did he end up? He ended up with the Jewish people. So this guy is like, this guy is heavy stuff. But still, there's something inside which still is connected to the nation that he's from. And it takes 10 generations to wean yourself off. So when Yitro hears about the exodus of Egypt, he's extremely happy. But what's he happy at? He's happy at the fact that the Jewish people were redeemed. That's as far as it goes. The buck stops here. So What are these holidays? Are these holidays the Jewish holidays, the Jewish idea of the holiday? What Hashem wants from us? Is this a one-track celebration of we are extremely celebrating the salvation, redemption, the saving of the Jewish people? We are totally ignoring. Not only ignoring, maybe we're saddened by the fact that it had to be like Golda Meir said. We're saddened by the fact that it had to come at such an expense to human life. I wish that, we could have just walked out there. They said, listen, leave us alone. Just let us go. I'm so sad that, that they were brought to the sea and then this happened. It's really terrible. It's really terrible. So what's the correct attitude that a Jew must have when looking at the holidays? Okay. Source number 1. There's a question, might even say this question, that is asked in the Talmud, Megillah 21, side B. The Talmud says in Megillah the following question. When we all know the blessings that we recite on the Megillah scroll on Purim, right? There's 3 blessings that we say. We talk about the blessing over the Megillah, we have the blessing over the miracles, we have the blessing over a new holiday every year as it comes around. Okay, but the question is, there's a dispute on what do we say after the Megillah is finished. Now, not everyone knows this. Not everyone knows that there's blessings that are said after the Megillah. Why is that, Len? Let me tell you why. Because people are so hungry. They've been fasting that whole day. Man, they just want to okay, let's hit those Oznei Aman, baby. I don't have time. I heard the Megillah. Okay, you have to hear every single word. I heard it. Okay, now he's running out. Unbelievable pace. He hasn't run this fast since last year's fast. He's really running out over there. Okay, got to get those Haman ears. Got to get something in my tummy. So most people don't even know that there are blessings at the end, but there are. There's a blessing at the end. So there's a dispute. There's a dispute by Rav Sheshet and by Rav Abba Bar Kahana. Rav Sheshet writes the following. His blessing is talking totally about, thank you Hashem, you have destroyed our enemies, and if you avenged our blood, it's full of vengeance, it's full of the Jewish people fighting against the adversaries of the Jewish people. On the other hand, maybe it sounds funny, but Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, you might expect it to be the opposite, Kahana. But here he says, no. The blessing is very simple. Not any of this, fighting in blood and all this battles. Thank you, Hashem, for redeeming the Jewish people. Ha'ela Moshiach. Okay, Rav Papa comes by and says, okay, time out. No dispute, okay? Get back. You stand back, you stand back. What are we going to do? Beautiful Torah this is, folks. Rav Papa comes and says, you know what? You're correct and you're correct, but to a certain degree. So what are we going to do? Rav Papa comes by, and this is the Jewish law. This is the halacha. This is what we do on every Purim. Check it out. It's coming up in less than 2 months. It's coming up in less than 2 months. So Rav Papa says we take what Rav Sheshet says, all the vengeance, all the battles, all the killing of the enemies. And we also take what Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana said about God redeeming the Jewish people. And we take them both together and we mix them and we say both issues. We bring up both points. We are happy for the salvation of the Jewish people, and we are also as happy as for the downfall of our enemies. So this is a tremendous idea. We see here, on one hand, Yitro, where he was one-sided. So we'll see not necessarily so. We'll see commentators that say, no, you didn't understand what was going on here. And on the other side, we have the Talmud, the Halacha, which tells us mix them both and concentrate on both these issues. They're as both important.
Where's that up?